1989 South African Rally Championship, which was dominated by Serge Damso and Toyota, and also saw the emergence of several young talented drivers, particularly in the Toyota and Volkswagen camps.
The season opened with a Tour de Valvoline in Natal in February, and as expected saw a battle quickly develop between 11-time South African champion Castrol van der Merwe and Serge Damso. New rules and regulations in the various classes went into operation for the first time and were to provide for close competition. But if anyone expected the new rules to prevent team domination, they were in for a shock. By his own high standards, Van der Merwe and fellow Springbok Frans Boshoff had a wretched season, and the championship was dominated by Damso and Vito Bonafide. While Van der Merwe and Damso fought it out in front of the field, Frank Lindemann and Johan Seeling were involved in a great battle in Class B, with local pair Jannie Habig and Douglas Judd. Toyota teammates Glenn Gibbons and Roloff Fecken fought it out in Class C, with Koos Roos and Dave McGregor scoring their only points of the season by winning Class D ahead of Louis Parsons and Robert Curry. Rising star Enzo Keen ran into problems in his Class D Toyota Conquest, but for Damso and Bonafide, it was a golden start to a golden year. They held off Van der Merwe and Boshoff to win, and the champagne flowed as the pair celebrated in style. The Toyota pair won Class A, with Class B going to Lindemann Seeling and Class C to Gibbons and Peter Cuffley. Roos and Kyalami boss McGregor took Class D, but the Valvoline was destined to provide them with their only finish in a dismal season. Round 2 of the championship moved to the fairest cape of them all for the Nissan International Rally. Nissan hopes were pinned on former South African champions Hannes Grobler and Piet Swanepoel in an event that, as usual, incorporated spectator-orientated special stages with stages in traditional rally country. For Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide, the Nissan was to provide the Toyota pair with their second successive win. Damso has lived in the Western Cape nearly all his life and revelled in the conditions, as he and Bonafide, who also has strong Cape roots, cruised to victory. As the event wore on, Habig and Judd emerged as the leading Nissan challengers. Ever spectacular in a rear-wheel drive car, Habig drove consistently, but was never in a position to put additional pressure on Damso. A high-speed accident put Grobler and Swanepoel out of the running, with both driver and navigator lucky to escape serious injury. Mechanical problems were also to put an end to the Van der Merwe Boshoff challenge, and as the frontrunners fell by the wayside, so Damso and Bonafide, driving a Class C Conquest, tightened their grip on matters. Glenn Gibbons and Peter Cuffley fought a tremendous Class C battle throughout the event, with Toyota teammates Roloff Fecken and Francois Jordan. Gibbons and Cuffley finally finished 4th, with another strong showing from Frank Lindemann and Johan Seeling putting the pair 6th, behind Eliseo Miranda and Ivor Peltz. Once again, it was bubbly time for a delighted Damso and Bonafide, with Toyota the dominant factor with 5 top 10 finishes and 2 class winners. Ralph Chadwick and Mike Constable took Class A, with Habig and Judd winning Class B. Damso and Bonafide took Class C by a wide margin, with Enzo Keen and Naas Bleitler first home in Class D. The Westbank International Rally saw the championship move to the Highveld for the first time, with the Eastern Transvaal sections of the event providing competitors with plenty of problems via traditional enemies, mist and dust. There were also more problems for Volkswagen team leaders Castrol van der Merwe and Frans Boshoff. Another non-finish saw their championship hopes rapidly fading, with nothing seeming to go right for the multiple former South African champions. Two other former champions, Hannes Grobler and Piet Swanepoel, bounced back with a hard-earned 3rd place behind the Volkswagen Golf of Johan Ebertse and Steve Harding. Another consistent performance put Jannie Habig and Douglas Judd into 4th spot, but no one could halt the Damso Bonafide march, as the pair chalked up their 3rd straight overall win for Toyota. This time there were 5 Nissans in the top 10, but they could not manage a class victory. Class A went to Damso and Bonafide, with Volkswagen pair Evertse and Harding taking Class B. In Class C, it was the Gibbons-Cuffley Toyota, with Louis Parsons and Rob Curry winning Class D for Volkswagen. Stanic van der Merwe and Frans Boshoff led the field away in the premier rally of the year, the Castrol International, which starts in the Republic and traditionally finishes in Swaziland. Johan Evertse and Steve Harding were quickly into their stride, but there were early problems for Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide, who found themselves with a great deal of ground to make up. Then a water splash in a wet Swaziland provided the pair with further troubles they could have done without. This episode put a break on the Damso-Bonafide fightback as they tried to cut into the lead established by Evertse and Harding in the Lindsay Saker Volkswagen Golf. After an inconsistent start to the season, Evertse and Harding were starting to look threatening. Eric Sanders and Tulu van Westerachen were also forced into retirement, with the antics of the four-wheel drive Toyota Conquest showing just how difficult the conditions were. For van der Merwe and Boshoff, the misery continued, and once again they were reduced to non-finisher status. Steady performance saw Nuno de Cunha and Paul Rouillard take their Nissan Skyline into third place, with Grobler and Swanepoel turning in another plucky performance to hold on for fourth place. Grobler and Swanepoel also did not enjoy the best of seasons in their Nissan Sentra, but the pair never gave up trying. But the rally belonged to Evertse and Harding, who scored their first SA Championship victory to finally break the Damso-Bonafide sequence of wins. Volkswagen, Nissan and Toyota were all equally represented in the top 10. Volkswagen and Toyota shared class honours, with Class A going to Damso and Bonafide, Class B to Evertse and Harding, and Class C to Gibbons and Cuffley. Natal pair Tony Ball and Tony Babb came through to win Class D. The fifth round of the championship, the Stanic Mountain Trial, was again run in magnificent rally country in the mountains in the Oliver North, Lady Grey and Berkeley East area. Run on public roads, the Stanic is a high-speed affair and is a navigator's nightmare. The rally also produced the closest finish of the season, with Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide holding off Stanic van der Merwe and Frans Boshoff by just 8 seconds in what was an epic battle. Nick de Waal and Guy Hodgson produced their best form of the season to finish in fourth place in their Toyota Conquest and take the Class C honours. Jannie Hubich, revelling in the conditions, was as spectacular as ever in the Nissan Skyline, but ended up as a non-finisher. Johan Evertse was also a non-finisher, but the camera shows why navigators are wary of the Stanic. An in-car camera also gives an indication of just how hard rally drivers have to work. Glenn Gibbons and Peter Cuffley were forced to do some heavy braking here, but 9th place overall kept alive their championship hopes in Class C. The Serge Damso smiles said it all as the Cape driver and Bonafide scored their fourth win of the season. Toyota and Volkswagen dominated the top 10 to emerge as frontrunners in the coveted South African Manufacturers Championship. Class A again went to Damso and Bonafide, with Glenn Hall and Martin Botha taking Class B. C went to de Waal and Hodgson, with Tony Ball and Tony Babb again the Class D winners. Volkswagen were desperately hoping for a win on home territory in the Volkswagen Algoa rally, but the pattern was to continue, with Damso and Bonafide again winning to wrap up both the 1989 South African Drivers and Navigators Championships. Toyota also took second place, with Eric Sanders and Tulu van Westerachen producing their best form of the year. Campaigning in a Class B car in a desperate attempt to pick up much-needed championship points, Stanic van der Merwe and Frans Boshoff finished third, but it was not enough to rescue their fading title hopes. Evertse and Harding fought all the way to finish fourth and won their personal duel with Habich and Judd in Class B. With a Class B title at stake at the end of the season, every point was crucial for both crews. Glyn Hall and Martin Botha soldiered on to finish 7th overall in the A-Link Class A car, inherited from Van der Merwe and Boshoff. In the Class C Championship, Nick de Waal and Guy Hodgson closed the gap on Toyota teammates Glenn Gibbons and Peter Cuffley, with a third Toyota team, Roloff Fecken and Francois Jordan, also in the thick of the battle. Rising star Enzo Keen, partnered by Nas Bleitler, strengthened his challenge in the Class D Championship with an impressive performance to finish 15th overall. There was also an encouraging drive from another star of the future, Paolo Piazzamuso. He was to switch from a Class A car to a Class D car for the next event. Damso and Bonafide were on the winners' rostrum for the 5th time, with Volkswagen showing up strongly with 5 top 10 finishes. Once again, Class A went to Damso and Bonafide, with Van der Merwe and Boshoff winning Class B. Class C honours went to de Waal and Hodgson, with Keen and Bleitler winning Class D. The penultimate round of the championship moved back to the Cape for the Toyota Dealer Rally. With the South African title in the bag, Damso and Bonafide were looking for the win that would put the cherry on top of the cake. Alas, it was not to be, and their rally lasted just one special stage with mechanical failure sidelining the pair. With Damso and Bonafide out of the running, Van der Merwe and Boshoff finally got their act together to score their only win of the season and break the Volkswagen drought. Victory, however, only came after a prolonged battle with Eric Sanders and Tulu van Westerhagen, who hounded the former champions all the way. In Class B, the duel between Jannie Habich and Johan Evertse ended in favour of Habich, but only just. Habich finished 3rd and Evertse 4th after the Volkswagen driver had staged a great comeback. The result meant that the Class B title would go to the final event of the season. The husband and wife pairing of Ben and Isabel van der Westhuizen produced one of their best performances of the season. They took their Toyota Conquest to 11th overall after a steady performance. In Class C, the Nick de Waal-Guy Hodgson combination put additional pressure on class leaders Glenn Gibbons and Peter Cuffley, who were among the non-finishers, with another solid performance that led to 7th place overall. Enzo Keen and Nas Bleitler came down to earth with a bump in Class D, but were better off than Johnny and Marty Olivier, who ended their rally on an upside-down note. Taking on the youngsters in Class D were veterans Tony Ball and Tony Babb, who lost a little ground in the championship race by coming in 3rd in class. The Natal pair were as steady as ever, but in a class where there was plenty of needle, Paolo Piazzamuso and Joel Talton were in sparkling form to edge out Enzo Keen and Nas Bleitler in what had turned out to be a battle between youth and experience. It is years since Van der Merwe and Boshoff have had to wait so long for victory, and they ended in fine style. 6 cars in the top 10 saw Volkswagen keep alive their manufacturer's championship hopes, with the pressure firmly on Toyota in the final event of the season. Supervan and Boshoff won Class A, with Habich and Judd taking Class B. Class C went to de Waal and Hodgson, with Piazzamuso and Mistalton tops in Class D. The season finale, the NGK Sparkplugs 400, took crews back into the Eastern Transvaal forests with plenty at stake. Toyota and Volkswagen were locked in battle in the Manufacturers' Championship, with class titles also on the line. The battle for the lead centered around Damso and Van der Merwe, but once again, Supervan was to figure among the non-finishers. A costly off-road excursion was to cost Jannie Habig and Douglas Judd the Class B title, but Nissan teammates Kasi Kutsia and Wally Harrington were in superb form to finish second overall. Nick de Waal and Guy Hodgson were third overall and took Class C in their Toyota Conquest. But it was not enough to prevent teammates Glenn Gibbons and Peter Cuffley from taking the Class C National Championship by a narrow margin. Enzo Keen and Nas Blakely wrapped up the Class D title and comprehensively won their battle against Paolo Piazzamuso and Jill Tarleton. For the sixth time in the season, the champagne flowed for national champions Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide. 7 cars in the top 10 and 3 class wins said it all for Toyota as they wrapped up the Manufacturers' Championship. For Damso, Bonafide and Toyota, it was a fitting finale to a golden year. Russia